and welcome to another edition of Facebook Live from Texas Christian University. My name is Heath Einstein, and I have the great privilege of serving TCU as Dean of Admission. And we are so thrilled to be with you this evening or this morning, depending on where you're joining us from. And I see we have people from all over the place. So welcome to Dandra from right here in Fort Worth, and Sally from Roanoke. Good to see you, Sally. I saw you last week on campus. It's awesome to see you here. Rodney from my home state of California. We got Monica from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Josh from Missouri. Aaron from San Diego. We've got Lorena from Costa Rica. So awesome to have everyone with us. We have a really, really special program tonight for you. We like to start all of our events with a land acknowledgement. We're in a really sacred space. So TCU respectfully acknowledges all Native peoples who have been here since time immemorial, and in particular, the Wichita and affiliated tribes upon whose ancestral homeland TCU is located. So if you have a chance to check out the monument between Reed Hall and Jarvis Hall, I would highly encourage you to do that the next time you are on campus. Okay, if you have been with us before, you know that on these Facebook Live events, we are completely unscripted. I don't know what is going to be said tonight. I don't know what I'm going to say within the next 30 seconds. It just comes out naturally. But we have a great topic tonight, one of tremendous interest, I think. And I know that for a fact because we have a lot of folks who ask questions on Instagram even before we started. So I know lots of people want to know about Greek life at TCU. So go ahead, if you haven't done so already, pop in as many questions as you can or as you want. We're going to get to as many of them as we are able to over the course of the next approximately 57 minutes. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves. I've already done that. And then we're going to just open it up for questions. And we want to be able to answer anything that you have. So I'm going to throw it over to my colleague, Brooke Scoggin, who's going to introduce herself. And yeah, take it away. Good evening, Brooke.
Hi, thanks for having us. As Heath said, I'm Brooke Scoggin, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life. And I am also a TCU alumni, so I adore this institution and feel very, very grateful that I get to work here every day, that now TCU pays me to come here, which is so cool. And I get to work with the wonderful students you're about to meet below.
Yeah, well, speaking of whom, why don't we start with Megan?
Hi, I'm so happy to be here tonight. My name is Megan. I am currently a senior at TCU. Last year, I had the privilege of serving as the Panhellenic president, and I am originally from Southlake, Texas, and I'm currently pursuing a undergraduate bachelor's degree in political science.
Great to have you here, Megan. Bo, how are you?
I'm doing great. Hi, everyone. My name is Bo Poitevent. I'm currently a junior, and I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. And right now, I am the Interfraternity Council's Chief Justice.
Fantastic. And we also have Layla with us, whose video is not working, but her audio is working. So we will capture her opinions via audio. And good evening, Layla. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. My name's
Oh, there you are. Fantastic.
Hi. My camera started working. So I'm currently a sophomore accounting and finance major, and I currently serve as the president of Sigma Lambda Alpha, a multicultural Latina sorority on campus.
Awesome. Well, you know, we've already got, I have a question that's come to my head just by way of the introductions that you all had. So can you describe what the different councils are? Because we think of Greek life as this sort of monolithic activity, but really it's lots of different opportunities for students. So who wants to take a stab at describing the different councils?
Well, I can take a stab at it since I would say that the Multicultural Greek Council is very diverse. Not only in just the people that it brings into its fraternities and sororities, but I think what sets us apart, as I said, is the people that we have in our council. They come from different backgrounds, different places, and we're so uniquely diverse. I would say that we bring a lot of culture on campus. So you'll see us having taco sales or bringing music and dancing and strolling. And I think it's a very passionate community, and it brings a lot of culture and pride with it.
Awesome.
The Panhellenic Council is the largest council on TCU's campus. So we have around 3,500 girls in our council each year. We usually have a little over 1,000 girls go through our formal recruitment process in the fall each year. And we have 13 chapters on campus. And the main purpose of these chapters is to provide sisterhood, philanthropy, and academic support to the members.
Awesome. Bo, tell us about IFC.
So for IFC, it's similar to Panhellenic. I guess it would be the second largest council on campus. I work with 6 other guys and we oversee 13 chapters. And they complete anything from philanthropy events to community service days. Of course, during formal recruitment in the fall, there's anywhere from between 600 to 750 freshmen guys who are hoping to join one of the chapters.
Awesome.
And
Well,
I'll hop in because
yeah, please.
two aren't represented here. We only had so many. There they are. Only had so many room on the screen for faces. So our National Panhellenic Council is our historically African American groups, and then our Independent Greek Council is going to have our band or music organizations as well as our Christian sororities. So those make up the full picture of who is part of our fraternity and sorority community.
Perfect. Well, and Megan, you talked about how Panhellenic is the largest of the councils, but of course there are more councils, and that actually leads into a question that Ella Grace asked on Instagram, and that is, what % of students are in Greek life at TCU?
I would say as far as sororities, around 50% of women enrolled in TCU are a part of sororities. I'm not sure, Bo might know the answer better for the men, but there's a really large presence of Greek life on our campus, and a lot of women do find membership in these groups.
Fantastic. That leads to a question that I have, and there we go, 54%. And I think it's a little bit more for the women, a little bit less for the men, but it averages out to about that. Caitlin Giroux asks, and this is a question I would love all of our students to answer, what are the advantages to joining Greek life? So Bo, why don't we start with you? What are the advantages?
I'd say that one of the biggest advantages is from day one, the start of your recruitment process with whichever council you decide to pursue or participate in recruitment under. You begin to meet friends and other, guys or girls that are interested in similar chapters to you. And then as you visit different houses and different events, you get to meet guys who are from different states, different upbringings, different backgrounds. And that's a huge benefit. As you start your classes at TCU, you wouldn't believe how many people you would already recognize just based on those you meet during your recruitment process. And that would be the biggest benefit that I would see absolutely from the start of, the process.
Layla, what about your perspective?
As I said earlier, I would say that MGC, we bring a lot of culture and diversity onto campus. So I think one of the biggest benefits of joining it is the connection you make with people. I know for myself, I've definitely found a community within MGC and know that I can always rely on my sisters or other people within the council to help me. And it's always nice having a familiar face in class or on campus. And honestly, I think it just brings in such a community at TCU and makes you want to stay on campus.
Awesome. Megan, what do you think are the advantages?
Just echoing Bo and Layla, it is really great to see so many familiar faces and just to be able to make friends so quickly, especially at the beginning of your college experience, which can typically just be scary and overwhelming. But I've also found that post-grad, I'm a senior this year, so I'm looking for jobs, and sororities are a great way to network because you have a network that expands beyond just Fort Worth or TCU. You have a national network of sisters, and it's a really wonderful way to get connected in a lot of different fields that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, those are all outstanding points. We talked about, or someone mentioned, I think, Bo, you mentioned that even during the recruitment process, how you can meet people. Can you all walk us through what recruitment looks like? And is that something that happens in the fall semester or the spring semester? Let's see, Megan, maybe why don't you start this one?
Yes, so the Panhellenic Council, we have formal recruitment in the fall, and that takes place the week before classes begin at TCU. So this year, I believe it starts on August 10th, and it starts or move in for women who are going through Panhellenic recruitment will be on August 10th, and recruitment begins on August 11th. And our bid day, so the last day of recruitment, is the Sunday before school starts. And some chapters, depending on their chapter sizes, are eligible for continuous open bidding or net like COB. And that happens typically in the spring semester.
Got it. Layla, what about in your council? Does it work similarly, or is it different?
So our council is a little bit different because our council actually does both rush in the fall and the spring. And how our rush looks like is it's actually a secret process. So you're actually not allowed to tell anyone that you are joining. Once you are in the process and you receive a bid is when your process technically begins. And this is also in respect to the people who have come before us and the Divine Nine and PHC. So you aren't allowed to tell anyone you're in the process. And during this process, you're bonding with your line sisters, which are the girls that are joining with you. And you basically learn history of the sorority, the Greek alphabet, other information important to the sorority, the secret handshake, secret codes. And at the very end of your process, we have something called a probate or a new member presentation where the line sisters and all the girls, the PNMs, potential new members, are presented and they present the information they learned during the process. And basically, it's just a accumulation of all the hard work you've put in over the semester. So our process is actually a semester long.
Bo, how does it work with IFC? Is it as structured?
It's more or less structured. So in the fall and in the spring, chapters are welcome to participate in a formal rush. In the fall, all 13 chapters will do so as you would see at any other school. And formal recruitment starts on August 18th for the guys this fall. And then next spring, depending on numbers within each chapter, each group can decide whether or not to take a spring class. And in the spring, typically there are fewer potential new members going through the process, but we still hope to put them in the right place. And so informal recruitment is also allowed under IFC, and that can happen anytime over the summer. Most commonly, I'm a Kappa Sigma here on campus. And so for us, that is usually meeting kids for lunch or dinner whenever they just happen to be in Fort Worth. And it's a good opportunity to spend some more concentrated time with an individual fraternity before you get to campus.
Great. Thank you. Layla mentioned the Divine Nine. Brooke, can you talk about that? Daryl asks, how large is the Divine Nine presence on campus?
Yeah, I'm grateful for that question. So NPHC is also known as the Divine Nine nationwide because there's 9 organizations that make up NPHC anywhere. And so at TCU, we actually have 6 chartered to our institution. Right now, we have 4 that are active, and we hope that that number grows. So NPHC is kind of top of mind right now as we look at incoming students and how are we marketing that experience to the students. Like Layla said, their process is not this structured out there process like you see for IFC and Panhellenic. And so how do we make sure we're telling students about these opportunities and facilitating ability for students to meet the members of those organizations and talk about what their intake process looks like? And that way they can really express interest in the org that most aligns with who they want to be. We'll also do that with MGC. So discretion, sort of the name of the game among those 2 councils in particular. And a lot of our MPHC groups, in fact, most of them cannot take first semester, first year students. They want them to earn some hours at TCU to let them settle in, see what their grades are. And that is their national policy to not allow that. However, they can still interact, and they certainly have events and ways to let students get to know who's in the groups.
Well, that policy is a really good segue to a question that Cole Kipker asked on Instagram. And that is, how challenging is it for students to balance academics and Greek life. So, Megan, I'm going to start with you. Either in your personal experience or from what you've observed in your sorority or other sororities, how challenging is it for students to do that?
I know in my own experience, and I think if not all, then most other Panhellenic chapters on TC's campus in their new member program, they require a certain number of study hours per week as you are working your way towards initiation when you are still considered a new member. And so they really want to facilitate women that have well-rounded academic lives. They want you to succeed. And so usually they will provide study rooms, tutors, they'll connect you to older members that are in the same program or degree plan as you to try and help you out with that. And usually there's a lot of different policies in place to help you succeed before anything would happen that could possibly damage your academic experience at TCU.
Okay, thank you so much, Bo. What about you? Do you think that it's a challenge to balance all that stuff?
I'd say for the IFC chapters, it's similar to Panhellenic. There are required study facilitated hours that the newer members must commit to. But on a different note, I'd say that kind of the beauty of college is you got to learn to balance your time between all of your different obligations, whether it's a fraternity or sports, clubs. You'll realize once you come to this campus how many different opportunities there are. And so whether you're in Greek life or not, the challenge that everyone faces is having to balance all your time and putting in the hours whenever you need to study. And that's kind of just the reality of it.
Layla, I saw you nodding along. It sounds like you would be in agreement with that.
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, one of our pillars is academics. So we do require our girls to do 20 hours of studying each week. And we have an accountability form for that as well, just to track their hours.
So would you say, because we had a question that's sort of built on top of this, Shandy Tally asks, can students do both the Honors College and Greek life? So I don't know if any of you are in the John V. Roach Honors College, but whether you are or you're not, I'm sure you know people who are in the Honors College and who are involved in Greek letter organizations. What's been your experience there with students having that added academic dimension? And anyone can jump in.
Yeah, so I would say a lot of our girls are very involved. They do come from first generation families, so they have to keep up the grades for the scholarship and have to complete study hours and get the opportunity to do 20 hours of community service with us each semester. So I know it can be a lot, and honors college is very demanding as well. I'm personally in NLP, which is kind of the partner of Neely Fellows, which requires people to be in the honors college. And I know that can be demanding as well. But honestly, what's helped me the most is time management. Having a calendar, managing my time, doing my assignments ahead of time, and looking at my week ahead of time instead of the night before has really helped me in my college experience to stay on top of things and stay organized, especially as president, because I am in charge of not only myself, but other people.
Yeah. Anyone else want to chime in about balancing the Honors College?
I would just say I'm personally not in the Honors College, but I know a lot of women who are in the Honors College and are also in sororities. And I would say, if anything, they're celebrated by their chapter for academic achievements. And like I was saying earlier, like your chapter will do everything they can to ensure that you maintain a really strong academic record at TCU, because each chapter also has an average GPA. And so it can get a little competitive. Everyone wants to have the best GPA. And so people are really striving for the best grades, as well as being, a fantastic chapter.
Excellent. Okay. Now, you all didn't realize this when you agreed to participate in this Facebook Live event, but we have a tradition every month, and that is we do dad jokes. And so I have a question, and we're going to see who can guess the right answer. Okay, there's a little competition here. Okay, remember, this is a dad joke, so put your best pun hat on. Okay, here's the question. What did the dad who was scared of elevators do? What did the dad who was scared of elevators do? Anybody? Y'all, he took steps to avoid them. All right. I see you all laughing. Good job. Okay, let's move on to our next non-dad joke question. And that is, I'm going to ask Brooke to respond to this question from Laura. And it is, if you join as a freshman, when do you move into the sorority or fraternity halls?
That's a really great question. So we really can't emphasize enough the first year experience, and that includes living in our residence halls designed for our first year students. So you cannot live with us until you're at least a second year student, which is great because we have a 2-year residency requirement. So if you join a group that has a chapter facility, you are welcome to live with us your second year, and we try to create as equally a good experience living in a fraternity and sorority hall. So TCU has a unique advantage here that we own, operate, manage the facilities. So they're not owned by the orgs, they're owned by us, which means they look like TCU buildings. They're treated like TCU buildings. They're staffed like TCU buildings because they are TCU buildings. And so your sophomore year, you can live with us. They only house 35 women on the Panhellenic side and 25 on the IFC side. And you've got to think our average chapters for the women are over 300. And the men sit at about 150. So it's a really small segment of our population, but I'm really proud of our village. It is beautiful, and it is quite the place for community. Even if you don't live in, students are hanging out down there. We've got monuments set aside for our MPHC, our MGC, and IGC. So there's gathering places. So our whole community is represented down there, and it's just really, really lovely.
I remember when those buildings reopened. Gosh, Brooke, it must be, I don't know, 6 years ago now or something like that. And our office took a tour of them, and we were just blown away. And I'm sure that they're, if I know TCU, they're still in pristine condition. So yeah, our students are very fortunate. Okay, I'm going to ask I've got two questions. I'm going to ask them one at a time, but they're sort of the flip side of the same coin. So I'm going to start with a question that Heather Howery asked on Instagram ahead of time. How do we get to know what fraternities there are and which is the right one for my son? And I think we could extend this to the women too. Like, how does someone know which chapter is right for their student? So Bo, since it was asked about the son, we'll start with you.
Definitely. So I'd say first and foremost to look at Instagram for any of the IFC's 13 chapters. Each of them, at least to the best of my knowledge, are always showing off what they're doing, whether it's raising money or community service events. Certain recruitment information is always released on there, but throughout the school year, they highlight the things that their members are doing. And in addition to that, the TCU IFC has its own Instagram where one of my buddies on the council highlights each chapter's own accomplishments, again, whether it's national awards or philanthropy events, community service, anything like that. And in addition, you can look online at any of the 13 chapters' individual websites with regard to TCU. And from there, it hyperlinks to their national organization. So if you're looking to see, what FICAP, what their flagship fundraiser is throughout the year, you can look and see what their communities look like, not only at TCU, but also on the national scale. And that's often a good way to better understand what each group stands for, what they prioritize, and of course, on the social platform, what they look like and who they are.
Excellent. Thank you. Layla, how would you respond to that question of how would a woman know or a young man know which organization is right for them?
Yeah, definitely adding off what Bo said. I think social media is a great tool to get to know like the culture and kind of the vibe, you could say, of a fraternity and sorority. I know that's how a lot of our girls find us is through Instagram and through the TikToks we make or the posts that we put up or the community service that we do together and just things like that. You can definitely see the personality of a fraternity and sorority shine through Instagram. And then getting to meet those people in person just furthers that of what you found on social media. I would definitely recommend stalking the page, which kind of sounds funny, but it definitely helps before going in, knowing like what you're getting into and knowing the girls, having familiar faces and making that connection too.
Thank you. Megan, anything to add? Is it any different for the Panhellenic groups,
I
or
mean,
the students looking at Panhellenic organizations?
yeah, I would say it's really similar to what Bo and Layla were saying. Definitely going on social media and looking, and going on the national website. All of the national websites publish what their philanthropy is, and usually what their core values, or if they have a mission statement. And if that resonates with you, that's really special. But also kind of keeping in the back of your mind that each chapter at different schools is a little bit different. And so just going into the recruitment process with an open mind, because it is a very unique and individual process. And so it's kind of up to you and how your experience is in each house.
So the flip side of that, the second question that I'm going to ask is actually from Megan Bijan, which is, what are you looking for in a potential member? So as you're going through the recruitment process from the recruiting side, what are some of the qualities that you're looking for in our young men and women? Who wants to take a stab at that one? Megan, why don't you lead us off?
It's a very hard question to answer. I think TCU's Greek Life community is so strong and has such an amazing presence because it's made up of so many different people and personalities and backgrounds and values. And that's what makes each chapter so special. As far as being able to answer that question, I know a lot of chapters, at least during the formal recruitment process, do have some sort of academic requirement. And so usually you do need to have a certain GPA just to participate in the formal recruitment process, but some chapters do set that bar a little bit higher. And most chapters are looking for a woman who is well-rounded. She has experience in leadership. She has a strong academic presence. She has maybe some philanthropy experience, and someone that they could see as a sister or a friend in their organization.
Great. Layla, you were about to say something, I think, and then I threw it to Megan. So how would you respond to that question of what are you looking for in a potential member?
I think Megan did a great job of answering the question for us. We do look for, kind, intelligent young women, especially in SLA. We do require 12 credit hours before joining the sorority, so that is a little bit different in MGC. But as far as connecting with the girls and meeting them, we look for sisters that we could see being in the sorority and overall just being a señorita, which is Spanish for a lady. Kind young women, that's what we look for and we value greatly.
Bo, is it just like a guy you want to hang out with, or is there more to it than that?
It can be, unfortunately or fortunately, the guys process looks a little bit less formal. I already mentioned that over the summer, there are informal events, whether it's getting to meet people over lunch or dinner. Those are something that can really mean a lot for a potential new member coming into the process. My biggest advice whenever I meet kids coming to TCU is always to take advantage of every hand you get to shake. Try to put more forward than just your name and where you're from, but try to build a connection with someone who's older than you. So when I was going through Rush, I tried to find people who like to fish or hunt and build those friendships early, even if it was just on the basis of similar hobbies, because that gives something, for the older guys to remember you. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. I have a question that I'm sure that there are some people who are wondering, and that is, look, we know that there are students who come to college knowing for sure they want to join a Greek letter organization, and then there are other students who may be on the fence. Can you talk to those students about sort of calming maybe their concerns or fears, and then also maybe if they go through the recruitment process but then don't end up joining a Greek letter organization, what their experiences might look like? I know that that doesn't describe you, but surely you have friends who who had that experience? They maybe went through the recruitment process and then decided ultimately not to join. Does someone want to respond to that?
I'm happy to go first.
Great.
So with regards to the part one, for anyone who's on the fence, I'd say that for me personally, I'm not best friends with the other 140 guys that are in Kappa Sig with me. However, I'll use a really strong example. This past semester, we had a tragedy occur in our fraternity and lost one of our brothers. And no matter whether we knew that individual very well or not very well at all, we knew at least that there were 150 some odd guys that were in the same position that we were, to lean towards, to talk with. And of course, on a greater spectrum, that brought all 13 chapters together, having to respond to the, issue at hand all together in one way. And so, that even if you're not best friends with everyone in your chapter, you have a ton of other people, whether it's guys or girls, that at least have a similar characteristic or a part of their resume to you that you can connect with them on.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else want to respond to those questions about the people maybe who are on the fence? You don't have to. It's okay.
I would say for Panhellenic, I think going through the recruitment process, I know Bo was talking about this earlier, just about how you meet so many people just through the process, maybe not even in your own organization, but it's definitely worth a shot. It is something that you won't ever get to experience again in your life. It truly is a unique experience, Panhellenic recruitment. And so I think at least giving it a shot and making as many new friends as you can, and you might just find your forever home.
Awesome. Go ahead, Layla.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was actually one of those people when I came to TCU. I was totally against Greek life, and now I'm the president of a sorority.
Yeah.
So I was on the fence just because I didn't see myself in a sorority, but after making those connections with the girls and meeting with them, and honestly, coming to college can be very lonely. I think finding that community was such a important thing for me, and that's what kind of drew me into sorority and fraternity life or Greek life.
That's great. That's actually a really important story for people to hear. That you don't have to be somebody who knew right from the get-go, and yet you can ascend to a position of tremendous leadership. That's outstanding. And can you all confirm for me that you have friends who are outside the Greek system and maybe that you've engaged with them in other ways on campus? Because I think there's a perception and a negative perception and an ill-informed perception that if you're involved, that's the only thing you do and you're not interested in connecting with other people, right? Okay. Kristen asks a question about Frog Camp and whether that's a good opportunity to meet people from sororities. So my question is, and I would extend that to like orientation as well. Everyone I know went through orientation because that's a requirement. Did you all do Frog Camp? And were those experiences that occurred before recruitment helpful to you as you went through the recruitment process? So who would like to begin? How about Layla?
Yeah, I actually did Frog Camp. I did the overnight stay at the cabin, I think Challenge B. And although I'm not sure that I met any of my current sorority sisters there, we actually found out later that we were at the same Frog Camp. I do think it was a valuable experience in meeting people outside of Greek, like as y'all were talking about earlier. I definitely made connections that I still have to this day, and honestly, just made me feel that sense of community more going into TCU. As I said, college can be daunting, so I think meeting people before school starts can really help during the first few weeks here.
Excellent. Bo, what about you? How did Frog Camp or orientation impact you, if at all?
So I was a transfer student, meaning that I did not go to Frog Camp, at least not in the same light that incoming freshmen would. However, I would always recommend going to it. It's a good way to meet other people who are in the same boat as you. And whether you know it or not, they could be just as nervous or just as scared as you are. And so that's always a comforting thing.
It is. And I'm glad. I didn't know that you came the transfer route. And that's actually reassuring to prospective transfer students that there's an avenue for them to join a Greek letter organization as well. So thank you for that. Megan, how about you? Did you do Frog Camp?
I did do Frog Camp, but I'm the class of 24, so I actually came in the fall of 2020.
Yeah.
So we were still in the COVID era. I actually did not go through recruitment until about a month and a half into my freshman year, which is very non-traditional for TCU, as we normally do it the week before classes start. But Frog Camp was the only place that we could meet people before classes started. And it was a fantastic experience. Even if you're not super social or you're more introverted, it's a great way to just get out on campus and maybe see pieces and parts of campus that you haven't seen if you are doing the Frog Camp that is here on TC's campus.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are still trying to block out that that semester. Brooke, I have a question for you. It comes from Kim, and that is, what are the average financial dues to join a sorority at TCU?
Yeah, so Panhellenic has, I think, a range of dues published on their website. So I don't want to go for memory because I don't trust myself entirely. but, but what I can tell you is the first semester in most organizations is your most costly. There's some one-time fees you pay. There are initiation fees, your sorority pin, all of those things come up in that first semester. And then after that, it decreases a bit. I will say, comparative to other schools, our dues are lower. So it's because we own and operate the houses. So that is, if you're looking at, if you have friends at other schools at UT or Arkansas, somewhere where the sorority or fraternity owns the house, if you're looking at house groups, their dues will be a bit more than ours. So you'll see a little difference there. But yeah, check out, if you're speaking to Panhellenic specifically, since you said sorority, tcupanhellenic.com will have a list of the range of dues. And then as students go through recruitment, in the third round, our chapters all have to disclose all of their financials to the prospective members. We know that students are informed consumers, perhaps now more than ever. And so making sure that people know what that financial commitment will look like for them is really, really important. And so we publish those for them. They're able to look at them and ask questions of the women. What do these dues go to? What does it mean? What is this fee? And we encourage the potential new members to do that. And we've heard students say, I like both of these groups the same, but this one I can make financially work. And so it can be a deciding factor for them. And so I'm really glad that program exists, because I do think it makes, like I said, informed consumers and gives students a real clear picture on the Panhellenic side of what their financial costs will be.
Thank you. Okay. Time for another dad joke. Is everyone prepared? Not everyone nodded. Okay, that's all right. Here we go. Why did the dad put peanut butter in the road? Why did the dad put peanut butter in the road? To go with the traffic jam. To go with the traffic jam, right? Bo is not into these dad jokes. Okay, that's all right. I can live with myself still. All right. Let's see. We talked earlier about academic standards and how when you're going through the recruitment process, you'll have study hours that you need to maintain. Jessica asks, can you speak to GPA and or other requirements for men to live in a fraternity house? Notice how she's concerned about men keep maintaining their GPA, not the women. I won't take umbrage with that, but she's probably right. Anyway, Bo, can you talk about standards to remain in the house?
Sure. So I know that it looks different between the guys and girls, and it probably looks different even within each chapter. For a lot of the IFC chapters, it is strictly based on GPA. And as Brooke mentioned, it's 25 guys can fit to live in that house. And so out of your 40 members of a pledge class, it might just be the top 25 GPA requirements. And of course, if there are certain individuals who might meet that threshold but don't want to live there, that just bumps the next person up. I do know that some of the other chapters focus a lot on involvement too. So if you put more effort into maybe a philanthropy event, or if you're filling an executive position within your chapter, that can also prioritize the process. But really what it comes down to is GPA a lot between the IFC chapters.
That actually just triggered a thought in my head, which is unrelated to exactly what we're talking about, Bo, but about leadership. You all are really important leaders in your organizations. How did that happen for each of you? How did you develop the skills needed and the desire to take on those responsibilities? Layla, why don't we start with you?
For me, I think leading has been a learning process because I am so young. I was actually 17 when I came to college, and my 19th birthday just passed, which isn't to say that I can't be a good leader because I am so young, but I think it is a strength. I think Neely Leadership Program has taught me a lot about leadership. We talk a lot about crucial accountability and crucial conversations and what it takes to make a leader. I think for me, my leading style is with empathy. I like to make sure that all my girls are heard, they feel loved, and they feel welcome within our community because we are a smaller community. At the moment, we have 31. So it is easier to be more personable within my sorority, at least. So I think for me, leading is to make sure that everyone feels welcome. And I think developing those skills has been crucial from learning from others, learning by example, and learning from other experiences within TCU.
Bo, what about you?
So for the IFC Council, myself, and I already mentioned this, but myself and 6 other gentlemen were elected to oversee each of the 13 chapters. And so my role is the Chief Justice, and I am responsible for maintaining and interpreting the IFC's constitution and bylaws. So if a fraternity wants to host a rush event or recruitment, event during the week, they can reference the constitution and bylaws and see the process that they must follow in order to do it legally, if you will. Otherwise, I'm also responsible for amending the Constitution. And if the fraternities or the chapters wish to change something about our operations, it would go through me, and then we would later on vote it between each of the presidents. And so myself and the rest of the council were elected by each of the chapter presidents to be the liaisons between them and then directors or administration on campus.
Wow, we have a future Supreme Court justice in our midst. I like it. Megan, how about yourself?
Before I served as the Panhellenic president, I was actually the Panhellenic delegate for my chapter. And the Panhellenic Council is really fantastic at making sure that everything that we do as leaders is relayed to chapters as thoroughly and as quickly as possible. So each chapter actually has 2 delegates that they send to council meetings every single week. And our exec board will meet with those delegates, and we will discuss what different chapters are doing, different philanthropy opportunities, and things like that. So I served as the delegate for my chapter, and then I ran for president and was elected through the nominating committees of our 13 chapters. But I think leadership at TCU is not hard to come by. Our campaign slogan for our 150th anniversary is literally lead on. And so TCU really celebrates student leaders, and they do everything in their power to help us become leaders. And it's definitely a constant learning process. Leading your peers is probably one of the most difficult things. Like, as Layla was saying, when you're a leader and you're the same age, you're younger than the people that you're leading, it can be difficult. But we had amazing advisors. I had Brooke advising me in my position last year. She was very helpful.
That's very kind of you to say. And Brooke, I'm going to ask you a question now. And that is, now a lot of the folks who are participating online right now are students, but a lot are also parents. You and I are both parents. So I want to talk to the parents now who may be concerned over hazing. That's a big topic on parent Facebook pages and when it comes to fraternity and sorority life. Can you talk about what TCU's policy is about hazing?
Sure. And it's a sad truth that it follows fraternity and sorority life, that hazing has kind of become really associated with us, though not unique to us. You'll hear about it in athletic groups and in marching bands and in various and sundry different places, but it certainly is often attached to our organizations. And so we take it really seriously. We talk about it. And I think that's very important, that we don't shy away from it. We don't try to hide it. You can see on greeks.tcu.edu, we'll have a community standards section. And in there, it lists every conduct violation that's come to our awareness. So probably not everything that has happened, but anything that's been reported to us, and what the outcomes were, whether the organization was found responsible or not. And that would include any hazing allegations. Those are on there. The state of Texas mandates that we send out notice 2 weeks before each long semester starts, telling every student on this campus what organizations, if any, have been found responsible for hazing over the last 6 long semesters, so 3 years. And we comply with that fully. And it also in that lists the state law about hazing. So it's against the state law of Texas to engage in hazing. And of course, it's against our code of conduct, and it is spelled out in our code as well. Anytime hazing allegations come our way, and they do, we work hand in hand with the TCU Police Department to investigate, since it is a crime in our state. So they'll take lead on any investigation, and then they'll share with us information when appropriate, right? Not to, if there's any real criminal activity that they're pursuing, they're not going to compromise their investigation. But they will share information with us to then allow us to do our part, to talk to the organization's leaders, perhaps even some of the members, to find out maybe it doesn't reach a criminal threshold, but for TCU, it's not in line with our expectations of students. Sometimes in that it may not quite even reach the hazing policy threshold, but perhaps their behaviors we just would rather not see, right? So one example I can give you quickly, this past fall, a call came in that a group of men were standing outside the basketball arena all dressed in business attire. In and of itself, not really terrible, right? Nobody's getting hurt, but for us, it felt not great. And where could it lead? And so it didn't end up being a hazing case, but we ended up speaking with the leaders of the organization. And what broke down was communication. They had the men showing up way too early for a meeting. And then the men didn't know what to do. And so they just stood there. And then once the leaders came, they knew they were going on essentially a campus tour and talking about different places the fraternity has done things. And they were ending up at our chapel for their ritual. So we had to get all the pieces of that story, and we take all of those very seriously. And we try not to, think, oh, it was nothing. In that case, it really wasn't anything. But it was a good conversation with the leaders about how important it is to give accurate timelines, tell the men what to expect, and explain what's going on.
Thank you. That's great. That's super helpful information. Okay, Ashwini asks, approximately how many girls are in each pledge class for Panhellenic? Megan, I don't know if you know those numbers off the top of your head, or maybe just in maybe a range from one chapter to the next.
So it definitely depends on the year and just how many girls are going through recruitment. This last year, I believe we had around 11 to 1,200 girls go through our formal recruitment process. And our average chapter size was around, or our average chapter pledge class was around 85 women. A couple years ago, there were some chapters that went over 100 women in a pledge class. But typically it will fall between 75 to 100. We also just got a new chapter, or we rechartered Kappa Delta on our campus this last year. So that will bring the average pledge class size down, because we're splitting the average between 13 chapters instead of 12, but typically somewhere between 70 to 100 women.
Thank you for that. And actually, that leads me directly into a question I have for Brooke. This is just from my own knowledge. I don't think anyone else asked this, but with our enrollment growing a little bit and growing a lot in recent years, but sort of marginally and with intention, how do we go about deciding when to bring additional organizations on? And are we continuing to have those discussions?
Sure. So we love our admissions colleagues because they give us enrollment numbers regularly, and we have whole spreadsheets so we can predict our model. So like y'all are predicting your models, we're predicting ours too, to figure out, especially for the women, how many we think are going to go through, because we have to plan for that. So do we order 1,100 whatevers, or do we order 1,200 or 1,300 based on our predictive models that we use over here? I don't think they're as sophisticated as yours, but they get us pretty darn close. And so each year we analyze that. Right now, we don't have any more chapter facilities. And so on the Panhellenic side, that's pretty crucial. We could have a Panhellenic group without a chapter facility, but I don't know that it would be as great of an experience. And it certainly wouldn't be a similar experience to the 13 groups. So we have been steadily growing, but our chapters are healthy. They are large. I think 307 right now is our total, our average size. But they are manageable and they're doing well. But that is something we kind of keep our eyes on frequently. With our culturally based groups, that we've seen growth there too, as our enrollment has diversified and grown in those areas too. Students wanted more experiences that were aligned with that multicultural experience. And so we've been able to grow those councils as well. And like I mentioned earlier, hopefully our MPHC will resurge and we'll see some growth in that council too. So we're really, I think, adaptive to the student population and the changing trends there, and also making sure our groups are healthy before we add anyone else.
Thank you. Anna asks, are there weekly meetings for each chapter? So I guess I'll pose that to all of you, because maybe it's the same or maybe it's different by council. But excuse me, Layla, why don't you start? Do you have weekly chapter meetings, or I guess how frequently do you meet for meetings and then other kinds of activities that you're doing?
Yeah, so we do have weekly chapter meetings. It's once a week. However, if you are on the executive board, you meet twice a week. So you will go to an executive meeting and then chapter meeting. And then as far as other meetings, you might have sisterhood activities, closed sisterhood activities, or open sisterhood activities for the community, as well as we might have community service together. So it depends on the week and month, but anywhere from the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester could look more busy or less busy, depending on the month.
Excellent. Megan?
The Panhellenic Council is very similar in that meeting style. The only thing I would maybe add is that if you're in the new member program, typically you have to meet once more in addition to the weekly chapter meetings. And that is just to learn more about the chapter, study up on the facts of your organization, and get to know your pledge class a little bit better.
Great. Bo, is it the same in IFC?
Yes, very similar. I know that some chapters aren't as good about meeting every single week, but for the most part, most of the chapters will meet on Sunday evenings, and they'll last 30 to 45 minutes just to have everyone in the same room and make sure everyone's listening to what's being said.
Sure. Okay, Caitlin asks, what is the marching band program like with Balancing Greek Life? So we had some questions earlier about balancing academics and maybe if you're in the honors college. And what about other activities that you're doing? Marching band's a really good example because there's some pretty significant commitments in the fall semester around football season. So I don't know if any of you have brothers or sisters who are in the marching band, but can you talk about that and maybe by extension, other commitments?
Yeah, I actually knew a fraternity member in MGC in the marching band. I know that and we had sisters in the marching band as well. I know marching band can be pretty rigorous time-wise, I've heard. So a lot of afternoons, and you definitely get a workout in, I've heard. So you get to stay in shape. But as far as balancing it with Greek life, I know it can be a little bit difficult because of the time commitment. However, there are pros to it, as well as like getting to travel with the football team and getting to meet new people. So
yeah. Anyone else have a different experience, or is that pretty much the same? Jibe with what you were. Okay. Oh, I had a question on the tip of my tongue based on something you said, Layla, and it has escaped me. Okay, that is fine. We are in the home stretch. And so I want to actually end on this question that was posed, and it's a really great question. This is how Jenny asks, or sorry, I'm not sure who asked this question. How has Greek life prepared you for your career, and Life Beyond TCU. And I know some of you are a little bit closer to Life Beyond TCU than others, but so why don't we go Layla, Bo, and Megan, since Megan is about to graduate here.
Yeah, so I actually have 2 more years left of TCU, which is very exciting for what's ahead of me and what's going on right now. I think Greek life has definitely prepared me for what is ahead. Being in a leadership position so young, quote unquote, I think has allowed me to really step into a larger role and have confidence within myself right now and going forward in like my future endeavors. I think leading people and being in charge of people has also taught me a lot of responsibility. Being on top of things, like I said, was such an important thing for me. So it has taught me a lot of responsibility. And moreover, it's just taught me a lot about connecting with people and valuing relationships that I make here. Because at the end of the day, I think for me, that's the most important thing, the relationships I've made at TCU.
Awesome.
For me, I will say with full disclosure that there's a huge transition between your sophomore and junior year, at least in my opinion. You go from wanting to have a lot of fun, meet as many people as you can, go to every single social event that you can. And then by your junior year, I'm a junior now. For me personally, I've definitely dialed back on the social events and some of the glamorous sides of the fraternity life. But I've realized that similar, the double blade sword of having 150 guys to rely on, the other side of that is that there are 150 guys that you have to learn how to deal with sometimes. And so we're all in college. We all want the best for our fraternity or for our parties or for our community service events. But realistically, we aren't always going to agree. And so I think that that's been a huge life lesson for me as I make my way out of TCU and into a career, whether it's working on a team or working with a company. I know I'm not going to particularly love everyone that I'm interacting with or spending time around, but it's important that you're able to compromise and listen to what other people need. And then, of course, implement your own ideas to best serve the community. So that's been big for me.
That's a great, thoughtful answer. Thank you. Megan,
I
our
think
soon-to-be graduate.
don't remind me. I think the 2 main things that my Greek life experience has prepared me for the real world is probably accountability and soft skills. Like Bo was saying, although on a larger scale in Panhellenic sororities, there are 300 women relying on me that I make the same great grades that they do to keep our GPA up, or that I relay the messages from the Panhellenic Council back to my chapter so they know what's going on, or learning how to own a mistake if you make a mistake, which is really important in leadership, especially when you're leading your peers. And then soft skills, especially during formal recruitment, you're doing a lot of talking, a lot of small talking, and a lot of trying to get to know people on a very deep level in a very short amount of time. And I think the soft skills that you can't necessarily learn in a classroom do come from all of the social interaction that you get in a sorority, and learning how to navigate a really large social group has been very beneficial.
Well, you all did a fabulous job. Thank you very much. It is now 7:00 Central Time. I'm sure you have homework or some other, maybe intramurals or some other activity you want to participate in. So thank you all for being here. Brooke, I want you to get home to your family as well. And I also want to thank 3 individuals that you all did not see, but were working feverishly behind the scenes. Amy Peterson from TCU's Marketing and Communication Division, Rob Berline from our Office of Alumni Relations, and Jenny Moore from the Office of Admission. Thank you, thank you, thank you for helping us make this work. That's it for the month of March. We'll be back next month with another edition of Facebook Live. So until then, go Frogs.